Keith, aka LoLByTheNumbers, and welcome to another video analysis from the 2014 World Championship of League of Legends. Once again, this is not a shoutcast, it is a video analysis. I will be providing spoilers throughout the match, so I'm assuming that you have watched it. I'll be focusing primarily on macro level play, team compositions and strategies, how teams pull off their compositions correctly, what they do wrong, and what they could have done better. I will also be talking about lane matchups in the downtime from that, and occasionally on plays themselves, especially ones that are game-changing. For this match, we have AHQ versus Samsung White. This will be their second match played against each other in the group stage. So without further ado, let's get into picks and bans. First off, we see Zilean Alistar Yasuo banned. AHQ have learned from last game against Samsung White that they do not want to leave Yasuo up, especially against the power of the synergies that they saw previously. Zilean Alistar are just generic bans. AHQ don't play them. They know Samsung White do. They're very strong. Knock them out. On the flip side, we see Nidalee Zed Maokai banned. Samsung White just don't like dealing with Nidalee. They don't want to play the split push game. They don't want to play the poke in this group stage. They just want to brawl and fight. So this leaves up for the trifecta of top lane, Ryze and Rumble. It's not the only one. In this game, we'll actually see Kayle being played. He's a decent pickup against Ryze. Gets a little bit bullied, it's weaker, but with what Samsung White is playing with their team, it works really great. So for first picks, we see AHQ picking out Lee Sin. This allows Samsung White to pick up Thresh, which is a takeaway from Green Tea, as well as just being strong, and Lucian. This is the first time they leave him up. Lucian is a major lane bully, and we are going to see this in this match. From AHQ side, our next picks are Ryze and Jinx. Well, once again, we see Jinx picked by Garnet Devil. Unfortunately, it's into Lucian. This means AHQ Esports should be looking for the lane swap. There's no reason to put Jinx against Lucian. She's going to lose the match. Even if she's slightly ahead, she's still going to lose out. Lucian is the bully, is the premier lane bully at this point in time, and with Thresh as his backup, there's not much Jinx is going to be able to do here. Her best bet would be to get Nami as a backup. Was one of the best counters to Thresh, but still that would put them in the back foot. On Samsung White's side, we see Kha'Zix being picked up. Standard pick against Lee Sin. In the jungle, the two top junglers we see almost every match. And we see Kayle. Kayle's another top laner that shows up throughout Worlds a couple times, primarily against Ryze. He does fine. Neither one really can kill the other or win the matchup. It does end up with Kayle being behind, bullied, but he provides his ultimate, especially in this composition for Kha'Zix going into his resets, and as we see Katarina coming up next. On AHQ Esports Club, we see Blitzcrank and Twisted Fate coming out once again. I guess they feel like the last game it was all about losing it at level 1, and so they're out to try for round number 2. Twisted Fate is once again a dangerous pick blind. There's a lot of counters to him. There's a lot of ways for Samsung White to take this. They could go Talon, Fizz being huge against Twisted Fate, but Samsung White, they know they're essentially in the clear right now, so they're going to pick up Katarina. Blitzcrank is also picked up again by AHQ, and if you saw my last video, I really dislike this spot lane. I really dislike Blitzcrank picked into Thresh. There's just tons to say on why it's no good. With Jinx especially, they don't offer much to each other. There's no burst coming out of Jinx. Her snares are a bit slow. They can be flashed over. They can also be walked around or ignored. Like, if she wants to guarantee they hit, she really needs to throw them to cut off the escape route, but then if the other team, instead of escaping, goes on to the attack, they're not useful. Her zap is meant more for the long range rather than the burst. There has to be a lot of timing done with this synergy that's hard to pull off because Blitzcrank has to take hooks when he can get them. Against Thresh, And I'm going to say this right now before going into team strategy stuff, because it's going to come up early in this match, is even when Blitzcrank gets a hook, Thresh kind of denies every potential of the Blitzcrank hook. If Blitzcrank hooks the ADC Lucian, then Thresh can throw out the lantern, Lucian retreats and backs off. If Blitzcrank hooks Thresh, Thresh has the option of going straight after Jinx. That's the signal for Samsung White to engage so that they can come out ahead in the fight. Thresh gets hooked, goes straight for Jinx, gets the flay, gets the hook, Lucian goes and attacks her, Blitzcrank's knock up and his pull are down, and there's not much he can do other than White attacks. This is why one of the big reasons why I don't like Blitz into Thresh is that there's no good hook option in this scenario in the lane, at least. I really would like to see AHQ move off of this and go into the 2v1s, knowing that Jinx is a lot weaker than Lucian, who's a huge bully, and knowing that Blitz is weaker than Thresh. It's not a lane they should go into. They really should go for the 2v1s. Ryze will be fine. He can go double jungle with Lee Sin, or he can go and get what CS he can in the bot lane. He'll be safe. And then Jinx and Blitz will be stronger against Kayle, I feel, than Thresh Lucian will. Because if Blitz is able to get a hook onto Kayle, pulls a lot more distance, Jinx gets the escape block off, and Kayle can't fight back. So it's much more ability for AHQ to have pressure in the 2v1 than in the 2v2. However, they don't opt to do this, and we see it comes to bite them in the bud. As overall team composition strategies go, once again with AHQ, it's almost the same team before. So if you heard it before in my previous video, here it is again. AHQ's team is more about the split push. This time around, they have a bit more synergy, and that if a Blitzcrank gets a hook, you can get Ryze snared, you can get Twisted Fate stun on after that. There's more options for Blitz to be useful outside of the laning phase in this match. He's got more targets to pick, so there's good opportunity here. AHQ should get the 2v1, get towards the level 6, get past the weak point of Jinx, and then move into team fights. Ryze can split push, look for hooks onto anyone on Samsung White's team really, and try and get those hooks when Kayle is away. So split push with Ryze, let Ryze 1v1 Kayle, he should end up winning the match. Move 4 people into middle to bot lane or top lane if Ryze and Kayle move somewhere else. Siege the turret. Jinx can get her rockets off. Lee Sin and Twisted Fate can provide protection, while Blitzcrank could look for that hook. If he lands the hook, Twisted Fate stun card, Lee Sin knockback. There's the pick that AHQ need, and they can continue to pressure. They have the range advantage, they have the wave clear advantage. They should be able to siege up a turret, and that's their win condition. Before getting into Samsung White's win condition, I'm going to wait right here. Here's where we see the problem with Blitzcrank. They do get level 2 first, just barely. Blitzcrank goes in onto Thresh, but Thresh says, screw this. He goes straight for Jinx. Now here's the problem. Jinx could have almost gotten away. Blitzcrank didn't get the final hit. He was trying to give it to Jinx. Jinx canceled her auto twice. She could have got the auto attack, flashed, and ran away from Lucian. However, here's the point about the matchup. We see Thresh being attacked by Blitzcrank. It wasn't a hook, but it was the knock-up. They had the level 2 advantage. Samsung White's team were still able to come out ahead. Lucian is a bigger bully, so as soon as Thresh got hooked, or knocked up in this case, he backs off. He doesn't back off, sorry. He goes straight for Jinx, flays her, hooks her. Lucian has time to damage her, and Samsung White come out ahead. Once again, we all know, or most players know, that killing the ADC for the support death is always worth it. We see a good lead given on to Lucian. He goes back, he picks up double long swords for an early brutalizer later. And this gives him even more advantage in this lane. So that's my issue with Blitz into Thresh, is even when you get a good hook, you get a good engaged. In that case, Thresh can turn it around and do much more than Blitz can. Now, onto the team strategy from Samsung White. Samsung White are running sort of a win lane, win game, bully, get resets team composition. But we know Kha'Zix and Katarina can both jump around if they get that first kill. Kayle provides the ability for safety when somebody goes in, allowing Kat and Kha'Zix time to get the resets, while Lucian allows for that upfront damage, that mid-game power ability that Samsung White need to get those kills for Katarina and for Kha'Zix to start up the resets. In this situation, I really do like Lucian going the Brutalizer early because they need that upfront damage. A good hook or a good ultimate, a good hook from Thresh followed up by Lucian damage, or even just a good ultimate from Lucian to soften up the enemy team will allow Katarina and Kha'Zix to get in there for reset city and to destroy AHQ's team. Once again, here's the problem. Blitz goes for a hook. He misses it. Lucian just dashes away. Thresh replies, gets the hook, way more, allows Lucian to go in. Lucian is so much stronger than Jinx. Bullies her out. Double kill, escape with the lantern. Even in the 3v2. This is why I really wish that AHQ had gone for the 2v1 lane. And just before this even happens, you can see how low Blitz and Jinx were. It's because Lucian and Thresh are able to bully this lane without having much worry. It's just the strength of the matchup. So if they had gone top, then they could have ignored this. They could have put pressure onto Kayle. Ryze could have got what he needed. And then they could have turned that into going bottom, say at level 4, level 5, after the turret's dead. Maybe even delaying longer so that they can avoid Lucian as much as possible. Up top, we do see lots of dives. It's the second time Kha'Zix has died killing Ryze. There's a flip side to this, is Samsung White are getting assists, even though Ryze is getting kills. He's also losing out on a lot of EXP. Probably it's his second or third wave that he's lost. That's why Ryze is level 5 and Kayle's level 6. So even in situations where you dive the 2v1 and you lose somebody, because you're diving, you have the creep waves there, and it's a big loss of EXP. So while it's not ideal, it still is worth it in overall terms of advantages. So as we move into the mid game, which is where Samsung White are going to want to shine, Ryze will be in his Mana phase. Twisted Fate will be strong in the mid game. He doesn't have his playmaking ability until he really gets Lichbane Zhonya's. So it's going to be a little while for him to... Well, he won't be as prepared in the mid game as, say, Katarina will. Put it that way. Jinx, not very good with one item. She needs 2, maybe 3 to start getting into the hyper carry status. Whereas Lucian is going to be very strong right from the start in mid game. Doesn't even need one item, just needs to be a sword, pickaxe, something. He's already strong right now, as you can see. He has his mid game power. So Samsung White can take their mid game power, move it into dragons, move it into objectives, jungle neutral buffs, and just bully AHQ around. And that's what they need to do. And then if they can get ahead in a lead, we all know a huge Katarina destroys teams, gets in with the resets. For AHQ, I'd really like them to save Blitz ultimate for Katarina, as it's much quicker than stun card, and it has range, whereas Lee Sin's kick does not. Would be the best thing he needs to do. He really needs to save that. He should also go for a locket as his second item, but we'll see if he gets there. So yeah, that's the team strategies. I would really like to see AHQ pull it out. It's more difficult, and they've already got a bad start. So one of my things to take away from this is make sure you understand your lane matchups and how bad some of them are. Be willing to make the 2v1s. There's no reason to go into a bad lane matchup in top or bottom. should always be looking for where you're going to have the most advantage and then trade an objective if it becomes necessary. See, once again, we see the blitz hook. Lucian, Thresh backs off, throws the lantern. Lucian gets away. The only reason he gets caught is that Twisted Fate does the really long port. Now, AHQ moved this into the dragon, and this is a very dangerous dragon for them. They're the weaker mid-game team. They're the weaker mid-game team, and here, watch, they go for Thresh. 3 people go for Thresh. Katarina and Kha'Zix go in on the people who are low at dragon and get all the resets. They don't even have KO ultimate until this late. And we'll see this again in the replay, and we'll watch AHQ's team. Watch them go onto Thresh. They leave the people at dragon who are taking the extra damage very vulnerable. And this allows Samsung White to get their resets. If they had backed off of dragon, let it go, turned around and focused on Cat. Like, they saw this happen, they needed to save his stun card. The moment he threw his stun card, Kha'Zix, Katarina go in, get resets, just go and clean up. AHQ get Thresh, but they'd be super happy with that. The threats in this match, especially in that fight, were Katarina, especially, and then Kha'Zix secondary. But they just weren't there. For Samsung White, Kale got 3 kills in that. Very strong now. He's going to get his Gnasher's Tooth, and this is the point where he can actually start to bully Rise all by himself. See him go out. He's got the advantage. He's got the red buff. Bam. So, going to go back and talk about lane matchups while this game goes on. Samsung White essentially they don't have the win yet, but they're definitely in control of the match. They're in the mid game where they're much stronger. Lucian is just the big bully. Kale has gotten so many kills. He's got a huge advantage over Rise that he's going to sort of move past his weakest point, which is before he gets his Gnasher's Tooth, or right when he gets his Gnasher's Tooth and before he gets his second AP item. He kind of hits a weak spot, and from this point on he completely starts scaling. So having hit it so much earlier than normal, it's really a huge boon for Samsung White. On top of that, we see Katarina's doing well in the middle. Kha'Zix, they're all just ahead. There's no magic resist being built yet on AHQ side, which is a problem, as Kale and Katarina are really going to start wrecking. One thing I really want to see from Kale at this point is him going... He can go either Death Cap or Lich Bane. He shouldn't go for Hurricane, because they want upfront damage, and that'll probably be best coming from a Death Cap, but a Lich Bane's just as good, as long as he can get that hit with his E. It's basically trading Q damage for auto attack hit. And this is a great delay by Twisted Fate to stun him and get the cards after intervention. However, we see that Samsung White is, they're ahead. They go 2 for 1. Kale only died because he was out of position, and Blitz got the hook. Whereas Samsung White took the red buff and got the resets. Samsung White will just continue to create their win condition, which is these jungle skirmishes like you just saw, going in for the red buffs, going in for the blue buffs, going in for neutral objectives for dragon. Samsung White will put lots of wards. They go for rotational mistakes, move from mid to bottom, mid to top, wait for AHQ to be out of position. So while that goes on, lane matchups. Rise against Kale is an interesting one. Rise is able to bully Kale early on. He's got the damage advantage, just throws out Qs. As the levels goes on, he uses his combo and then backs off before Kale can do a lot of damage with his auto attacks. It's really in Rise's favor to sort of stick on Kale and constantly damage him. The flip side is Kale is able to sustain up with his heal, and he's not really in any danger from dying to Rise. As long as he makes sure that he is always above kill point, then when Rise goes in, he can heal himself up, throw out the slow, and back off. Alternately, Kale can hold on to his slow and his heal, wait for the snare to wear off, and then charge at Rise. However, this will only end up working out for Kale if Kale is ahead. As you see him now, he gets close enough for Rise's snare to not matter. He can deal out lots of damage. In this matchup, it's really even, and if they go even, Rise eventually gets ahead of Kale. However, if Kale gets ahead, then he's the one who is able to dominate and bully the lane. It's very much about a gold advantage for Kale, whereas Rise just needs to make sure he keeps up the constant amount of bullying without getting in bad positions. So you see, one thing to take away from this fight is that not only did Thresh go in to get the Flay, but you saw Lucian prepping people. He went in, he did his Q, did his W, and then followed up with his ult. He got as much damage as he could out so that he can soften up the team for when Katarina goes in for resets. This is a real key factor of Lucian in this match. Corki would also work very well in this match, providing that initial damage needed to soften up targets. See, Blitzcrank is already at half health, Lee Sin's a little bit low, allows Thresh to go in, Kha'Zix, Katarina get the resets and the cleanup. Twisted Fate versus Katarina is probably a match we almost never see in professional play. In fact, it's the only one you'll see during Worlds, and probably one of the few you'll ever see during your play. However, it's very much in Katarina's favor, I believe. Twisted Fate is able to get his auto attacks and try and bully, but as soon as Katarina hits level 2 and beyond, the match is really in her favor. Anytime Twisted Fate throws out his wild cards, Katarina can Shunpo over them and attack him. Throw out her Q and her E, get the damage, take the stun card, and then just back away. She avoids the biggest amount of damage by Shunpoing over the wild cards of Twisted Fate to attack him. And that's how she stays relevant in the lane or even takes control of it. Anytime his cards are out, her Shunpo is up, she goes in, trades damage with them, backs out. This especially works out for her because she's generally buying regen at the start of matches. Either boots, 3 pots, cloth armor 5, health pots in this situation, or getting something like a Dorn shield in a pot. This allows her to out-sustain Twisted Fate, who's only going in with Dorns too. So that's how we generally see the mid matchup working out. Same thing happens at level 6. She can Shunpo in over wild cards, get her damage, and just wait, hold on to her ultimate. If Twisted Fate uses a stun card, then she can use her ultimate after that. There's not much threat onto Katarina from Twisted Fate. However, all Twisted Fate needs to do in this matchup is get early AP, get his red card, clear the wave, move out for his ultimate. Pretty much every matchup he fights. Clear, instant wave clear, leave. Don't even bother trying to fight the mid laner. And we did see that played out pretty well from Twisted Fate this time around. Take a break. I've already talked about the bot lane matchup, so let's get back into the game. Taking a look at items real quick. Give me a moment. Yeah, Death Cap is coming in from Kale. Like I said, I like that pickup rather than, say, Randuin's Hurricane, because Samsung White need the burst, not the sustained damage. Katarina has gone for Abyssal Scepter. This is good because it will help out with the burst from Kale, so it's just beneficial to the team, as well as providing defensive duties against Rise and Twisted Fate. And here once again we see Thresh throwing himself into the front of the line, taking all the damage, and then all the resets coming in afterwards. And get 2 kills for Samsung Y, and then they'll back off. Katarina goes a little deep, and they're just all protecting her so she can Shunpo. kills in the jungle. Like I said, Samsung's win condition is creating these jungle skirmish fights and then taking advantages afterwards once they win them. So we see them once again pressuring the blue buff, looking for wards and vision control, and then taking the fight when it comes to them and then backing out. For AHQ, they really... I think this is a good... Oh, no, not quite. Remember this one wrong. AHQ, they have to do Blitzcrank right now. They have to let him be everything. However, they go out to make a play. Twisted Fate uses ultimate. They're trying to set it up, but Jinx got caught out by Lucian Kayle, and then the team just collapsed. It went all downhill from there for AHQ. Lucian and Kayle were able to swing around behind Blitzcrank, Lee Sin, who were going in for the fight. So here we see Lucian almost instantly dead. Then they swing around, catch Lee Sin, get the resets, bam bam. Not much else to say about that fight. So for AHQ to win, they really lost it at that dragon fight. They picked the wrong target by going on to Thresh. Really the one thing they shouldn't have done. They let Kha'Zix and Katarina get the resets, and this put them ahead. Reset comps being ahead makes it really hard to come back. So at that point, AHQ didn't have too many options. They should have done at that point is probably moved into the 5v5, even though it would be very risky. By not moving into the 5v5, AHQ allowed Samsung White to continue to create jungle fights, skirmish fights, these small 3-man, 2-man engagements that turned into the whole team showing up and Samsung White getting their resets with the bursts and kills. If AHQ had grouped as 5 together, it would have been harder for Samsung White to get the initial damage onto people and pull off these resets, as well as forcing Samsung White to react to AHQ's movements rather than AHQ reacting to Samsung White's movements. They would have had to sit and sort of siege a mid-turret, perhaps while Ryze split pushes, but with him being behind Kayle, it really wasn't an option anymore. They could have gone for the 5-man, looked for a blitz, crank hook, be prepared to back off when Kayle ultimates, and then return to do it again afterwards. That was one of their few hopes. They had to get catches with blitz and put Samsung White on the back foot by pushing. So once again, it's one of those situations where it's kind of desperation. If you screw up, which you're more than likely to do because it's high risk, you just end the game faster for yourself. However, if you don't do something, you end up in a slow whittling down where you can't do anything anyways. You might as well make the big risky play rather than wait for your eventual demise. Looking at items, Katarina with the Zhonya's perfectly easy. Kha'Zix has picked up Maw of Malmortius. I really like that item as well. It's expensive, but it provides a lot of damage and a lot of utility and protection, stopping damage from Blitz, Twisted Fate, Ryze, as well as giving you that sort of surprise extra amount of HP. Can really bait the other team into trying to go a little too deep on a target. Other than that, things are pretty standard around the board. Not much else to say about items. The Morella Nomicon on Twisted Fate is okay, I guess. I don't know why you would go for Morella Nomicon as opposed to Chalice, Athene's Unholy Grail. There's 2 AP targets on Samsung White's team, and so if you're going to go for that CDR and mono regen, you might as well get some defensive stats for just a little bit more. Here we see more. Samsung White's power is just too strong. As anyone who's been in this situation, they dive and kill you however they want. Coming in from Ryze, he does get an early Negatron cloak. I like that instead of going for Glacial Shroud, but it's really just too little too late. there's not a lot that can be done. Go back and talk about AHQ's win condition again. If they had gone to the 2v1 lane swap, it would have been a lot easier for them to try and pull off their plays. Going into that 2v2 Blitz against Lucian was not, or Blitz Jinx against Lucian Thresh was really bad. Never should have happened. They should have made sure that they got out of that lane. This would let Rise, do a little bit better than Kale, I believe, because Rise has less threat coming in from Thresh than Kale would have coming in from Blitz. So it's just what needed to be done. This is one thing that AHQ do and EDG does as well. Is even when they're behind, they go make these crazy plays. Like they're rushing way down the lane to try and get a kill, and they're doing it a little too late. Honestly, even if they get this kill, it's not going to matter. If they're going to do these crazy plays when they realize they're behind, they need to do it a lot earlier. Like I said, after the Dragon fight, start making those crazy plays. Go middle, get that 5v5. Don't wait till your defeat is inevitable to try and make craziness. With that, I don't think there's too much else to say for this match. Samsung White could have ended it. I mean, they've been in the base a couple times. They're going reset crazy. They're just having fun at this point, really. How often do you get to play Cat on the world scene and do so well? So you can't. So while Samsung White are dragging this game out, they're so far ahead, it's not really a worry. They will lose to Rise, Twisted Fate, Jinx in the late game, but at this point it's going to take another 35 minutes before AHQ can even think to fight. So even if Samsung White mess around for a while, it's not going to harm them unless they continually do it. This is something we've seen from them a lot, and we've seen that when they get to the point where like, alright, we should stop screwing around, they stop, and they go and win. See, here we see them diving mid, taking the inhibitor, and they're going to back out again. Let's see. We do see Abyssal Scepter coming out from Kale. I don't know why you would double up on that. I guess he just wants some defensive stats, but he doesn't want so much defensive stats that he's going to build a Banshee's or a Spectre's Cowl. He could have just built a Lichbane or a Hurricane, and it would have been much better. There's already the Abyssal Scepter. Not that it really matters. We also could have seen the Leandry's coming back. We haven't seen Leandry's Kale in a while. Getting that splash damage proc. We also see that Thresh has built 2 Negatrunk Lows and has built a Quicksilver Sash. So he's ready for stuns. He's just screwing around. Really should have picked up a Locket, picked up a Mikhail's. Either of them would be fine. Keep up, play well no matter, even in the screw around games, because if you mess around too much, it becomes habitual, and you could throw an important game. So I'm going to talk about Scrying Orbs, since I don't have much else to talk about at the moment. Just in case you're not used to seeing them, Scrying Orbs are generally picked up by the team who's behind one or ADCs. The team will pick it up, use it to scout Baron, use it to scout objectives without having to go in, because the team from behind rarely has vision control. They're kind of playing blind. Scrying Orbs allow them to look at objectives without having to run in and face check. Provides a little bit of safety net. Usually you see the ADC pick it up. Samsung White have one, they don't really need it, but it does let them look for Blitzcrank. So Lucian will use it to look over walls when they're going in for these pushes. It provides a good little net against it. So this is going to be the end of the game. Samsung White there's not much more they can do. They've killed them all. There's nothing to mess around with, except for Cat going in, dying at Fountain. I hope you've enjoyed this one. It's another little pretty early game, but I hope you got some insight into some macro level play, maybe some items or lane matchups, especially on not running into really weak matchups in the bot lane. Uh, Blitzcrank can work, and in some games he's really good. However, into Thresh, you're really hammering yourself, so be warned. And with that, I hope it was informative and entertaining, enjoyable. And the notes for this match will be in the video notes below, as well as a link to my blog and the portal page for all of the 2014 World Championship notes and videos. So please leave a comment. I would love to get some feedback. And thank you. Once again, this is Keith, aka LoLByTheNumbers.